In this tutorial, I want to walk you through some of Scribble's advanced plotting features, and if you're not already a user of Scribble, I'll provide a link to sign up for Scribble in the description below. Now in other tutorials, I've shown you how to set up a new chapter where you can add a chapter number, a title, a short summary, a plot point, and so on. You'll remember that plot points will show up here highlighted while non-plot points won't be highlighted. You can also roll over this little icon here, remember, to see which plot point this card represents. Also notice to the left of each row, you'll see a unique color here. Now all of the plot cards to the right represent Act 1. And then as we scroll down here, all of these scenes represent Act 2A, further down, 2B, and finally the third and final act of our story. Now over on our writing page, the colors in the sidebar here represent the act that this scene or chapter belongs to as well, and you'll notice that these colors are the same both over on the writing pad page as well as the plot visualization page. Also, just keep in mind that you can also filter based on acts up here. Now back on our plot visualization page, just below the summary of each plot card, we have these little dots, which we can click to color code each plot card based on the specific needs of our story. We've also covered in previous tutorials how to add people or places to our book, so I won't cover that topic again now, but essentially once you've added any characters or locations to your novel, you can add them by clicking on the plot card, either click on the title or the summary here, and then just add any associated people or places to this particular scene. Again, once added, everything will show up here, and if we close out of this pop-up here, we'll also notice that any characters associated with this scene will show up down here. Also, at the bottom of each plot card, you can see the percentage complete for each scene or chapter here. So as you continue to write over on your writing pad page, this percentage will update in real time. Now, in fact, anything you manipulate over on your writing pad page will also be changed over on the plot visualization page as well, so you never have to make a change twice. For example, if I added a tag or a subplot here, I can go back to my plot visualization page and see that my subplot is showing up here. If I click on the Tags tab, I'll see any associated tags here. And then lastly, if you want to move around the position of these plot cards, simply head over to the chapter order page and you can drag and drop your chapters or scenes into new positions. These changes, of course, will then obviously be reflected over on your plot visualization as well as your writing pad pages. Next, let's talk about color coding. So Scribble's color coding feature is flexible and can be used in many different ways. So for example, some writers will use a certain color to mark scenes and sequels. For instance, this first card could represent a scene, the second card could represent a sequel, and I could keep this pattern going and then visualize it like this. I could also color code based on character point of view, subplot, or location, or a writer might choose to use this green color to mark a chapter as complete. As you can see, color coding can be customized based on the specific needs of your story or your specific preferences as a writer. Next, let's talk about plot points. So each of these cards essentially represents a chapter or a scene within our main story thread. However, many stories contain subplots as well. Now in Scribble, we can mark subplots or view subplots down here when we're on our main plot tab. Now to add a subplot, we simply click on the summary or the title of the plot card itself, and then we can add our subplots here. So for example, let's say that this second chapter as well as this fifth chapter focus on our love story subplot. I could just write love story here exactly the same both times on this subplot page. And then in this case, I'll color code our love story as blue. Now back on our plot visualization page, you'll see these subplots down here. But if I want to get more kind of granular than this and actually control the kind of progression of these kind of sub-stories, what I could do is I could click on my subplot page over here, and from here I can click on these individual tabs to add any information I want regarding this particular subplot. Now we have an entire tutorial dedicated to subplots, which you can view by clicking on this button on our subplot page here. But this is essentially how you add subplots. You can also add them from your main writing pad page down here. Now this leads me to the concept of linking. Again, our linking feature is flexible and you can use it in really any way that fits your story's needs. Now one common use of our linking feature is to link subplots. So imagine I'm touching on my book's love story in chapter 2, 5, 11, and 18. Now what I can do here is click on the first plot card on chapter 2. Then under linked chapters, I can add the chapters which I want linked to by this subplot. So I'll start typing in the chapter title of chapter 5, 11, and 18. And then once those chapters are added, they will show up in this list here. Now back on my plot visualization page, when I want only to view the chapters related to this subplot, I can click on this white link icon here. Now this will highlight all of the chapters that we just linked to, but notice only plot cards with linked chapters will have this little white icon. Also notice that once clicked, the icon changes from a link to a broken link icon. So to break the link and view all of the plot cards again, just kind of click on that icon one more time and everything will go back to normal. Again, linking is flexible and can be used for many different things. So for example, some writers will want to link their scenes and sequels. Others will want to link their book's red herrings. Others might want to link by location, by point of view, and so on. Again, it can really be used based on your specific preferences as a writer. Now next, let's talk about tags. On both your writing pad page as well as your plot visualization page, you'll see this option to add tags. Now, tags are a very powerful feature within Scribble, and like most things within Scribble, they are flexible and customizable. And let me show you a couple of common use cases here. So first of all, in order to use tags, we need to view our Tag View tab up here. Now let's imagine that we're writing a murder mystery novel and we want to throw our readers off the scent of the actual murderer. What we might do is we might place a few red herrings to throw our readers off course a little. Now, in order to remember where we're kind of planting those narrative elements, we could use our tagging system. All I need to do here is just open up the pop-up here by clicking on the summary or the title. And then under tags, what I could do is I could just type in red herring here. And now this tag will show up on whatever chapter I've added it to. As you can see it right here. Now I could also give as many plot cards this individual tag as I think my story needs. Now what's really nice about tags is that they also act as to-do lists. So let's imagine that you've marked this chapter to include a red herring. Now once you've completed writing this element into your chapter, you could simply click on the tag again to mark it as complete, and you'll notice that the tag changes from its original color to green, showing that it's been completed. This essentially shows you what you've done and what you still need to do. Now, because tags are kind of completable, they also help you kind of mark macro parts of your chapters as either incomplete or complete. Now, keep in mind that these tags can be marked as complete from either your writing pad page or your plot visualization page. Now, let me show you a basic and then an advanced way that this can be used within your story. Now, at a basic level, most chapters will have a beginning, middle, and end. But you can get more kind of specific here by clicking on Add Tags, and then click on this Common Tag Group section here. Now here, you can add an arc to this chapter by saying that most chapters will include a goal, a crisis, and an outcome. Now you can color code these any color you want, but I'm just going to click on orange here, and then I'm going to add them to this plot card. Now these tags act as visual reminders, which can help you complete each of these structural parts of your chapter. So for example, if you added these tags to a few different chapters in a row, what you could do is when you're going back to revisit your work, you can just mark each sub-step as complete once you've completed this part of the chapter. Now let's look at a more complex system that ties many of the things that we've just talked about together. So in Dwight Swain's book, Techniques of the Selling Writer, Swain breaks down a unit of conflict into scenes and sequels. Now, scenes are a unit of action where the writer of a scene will need to create a moment of kind of dramatic action which consists of three subcomponents. They are a goal, a conflict, and a disaster. Now, scenes tend to be very active. However, sequels, which are often used to bridge scenes, are often a little bit more reactive and also consist of three subcomponents, which are reaction, dilemma, and decision. Now, after a decision is made, we're kind of propelled back into the next kind of scene-sequel pairing. So imagine you're using this writing technique within Scribble. How could you use the tools we've talked about so far to kind of streamline these processes as a writer? Well, perhaps what you could do is you could mark each scene card as this color, and then what you could do is you could mark each sequel card as another color. So here, all of a sudden, you see we have a pattern going here. Then what you could do is you could use the linking tool to link each scene to its corresponding sequel. And again, you don't need to worry if there's spaces between scenes and sequels because you can link however you want to in Scribble. You can link distances, you can link between acts, and so on. Okay, so now that we have everything linked, we need to start thinking about the distinct requirements for each scene and sequel. So we can do that by first making sure that we're on our tag view here. And then what we can do is we can click on the individual kind of plot card. And then what we'll do is we'll click on add tags, and then we'll go over to common tag groups. Now from here, we can add goal, conflict, and disaster to this scene card here. Now, if we go back out and we go over to this SQL card, what we can do is we can just go through the same process, but now we can add reaction, dilemma, and decision. Now again, as long as we're on our tag tab here, we can mark these dramatic elements as complete once we've completed them. Now, once all three of these subcomponents are complete, perhaps we might want to change the color of the card itself to green to show that this chapter is structurally complete. Again, all of these tools are flexible to accommodate any writing strategy or technique that you're using. Next, let's look at draft control. Now, we have an entire video dedicated to writing drafts, but let me just kind of touch on this feature briefly. Now, essentially, these draft cards don't pick up the color coding of the tag or plot cards, so they can be uniquely color coded. This means that as you push each chapter or scene from its first draft to its final draft, you can change the color of the card down here. Now, in each draft, you'll usually be focused on editing something specific. So for example, you can roll over any of these dots here to see which each draft is focused on. So when you've completed the first draft of this chapter, for example, you could then mark it as complete, and then you can just follow the same process as you complete your second draft, your third draft, and so on. And this allows you to really visually see how much work each scene or chapter still needs. And lastly, I just want to touch on that topic of scenes versus chapters. Scribble has a couple different ways of handling this. Now, some books will have kind of one major scene or concept explored per chapter. Out of the box, Scribble kind of allows you to look at each of these plot cards as one chapter. However, if you need more granular control than this, you might want to view these plot cards as scenes instead. So for example, you might be thinking that you want to include roughly, for example, 2 to 3 scenes per chapter. Now, if you take this approach, there are a few things you need to know. First, you'll see this small vertical rectangle on each plot card here. Now, to mark a scene as the beginning of a chapter, you can click on this little rectangle and you'll notice that it turns white. Then, for example, a few scenes later, you might want to start a new chapter. So again, what you could do is you could just click on that rectangle. And now what we have is we have a visual separation between chapters on our plot visualization page. Second, over on the main writing pad page, you'll notice that each chapter we marked as the first scene of a chapter shows up a bit darker than the other scene cards here. Again, this helps us see where one chapter begins and another chapter ends. Again, you'll notice that you can also set the starting point of a chapter by clicking on or off this little button up here. Again, any change we make here will be reflected over on our plot visualization page. Lastly, under chapter number, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to set a decimal value. Therefore, rather than setting a chapter sequence to something like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and so on, if you're using these cards to represent scenes, you'll need to set them as, for example, 1.1 to represent scene 1 of chapter 1, 1.2 to represent scene 2 of chapter 1, and so on. And then when you're ready to move on to chapter 2 will get similar chapter labels. So for example, it will be 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, and so on. This sequence of scenes can then be seen on both your writing pad page as well as your plot visualization page. Again, Scribble is flexible enough to allow you to use these cards to either represent chapters or scenes within chapters, depending on your writing preferences. Now, of course, there's a lot more to know about plotting, but knowing these details about Scribble and how Scribble handles plotting is enough to get you started and enough to get you working at an advanced plotting level. Now, as you can see, our story plotting tools are flexible enough to allow you to use whatever writing system or strategy that you want to use, and these tools give you the space to kind of visualize your plot in a way that makes sense to you based on the needs of your story. So that's all I have for you. I hope you found this helpful. Again, if you want to use these tools yourself, a link to Scribble can be found below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe as we add new writing content to our YouTube channel regularly. Thanks for stopping by today.